Hey guys, Jocelyn here with Fantasia Elegance. With Valentine's Day right around the corner, I thought it would be fun to do a tutorial on something heart themed. So I have come up with this new ring design, very pretty in different colors as you can see here. There is a more simple variation of it as well as one that uses a little bit of added decoration to dress it up a little bit. But these are fairly quick to make. If you're new to wire wrapping, don't have very much experience, you might want to start with a different design from my channel, because getting this heart-shaped symmetrically can be a little bit tricky, as well as getting these rings exactly the size that you want them to be. That can be a little bit fiddly and tricky as well. But I will do my best to walk you through this and try and make it as easy as possible for beginners. So go ahead and check the description section below if you're curious exactly what tools and materials I'm using. I will try and leave links where possible to my exact ones. Everyone always seems curious about that. But for this ring you will be needing a 6mm central bead. I'm going to be using glass fiber optic beads that I got from Amazon. And I will be using this color, which I believe this one was called Azure, so that's what I'll be using. I did these practice rings in copper, but for the video I'm going to be using silver filled from Rio Grande. And you will need 20 gauge soft wire for this ring. That's the only gauge of wire you'll need. And optionally, you may want some 3mm metal beads. They go right here on this kind of deluxe version of the ring. So those are optional. For tools, you'll want your pretty standard chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, and flush cutters. You'll also want something to measure wire with and a ring mandrel. I do like using for this design a ring mandrel with a slot for the bead. That way, you know, when you put your bead on there to shape the wire, it has a little recess to sit in so that you don't break your bead when you're wrapping it around a metal ring mandrel or something like that. And you may also find it helpful to have some masking tape or painter's tape, something like that, just to help stabilize the ring while we're wrapping it. So I'm going to be using masking tape, and I'm actually going to tear off a little piece of that right now in preparation for later. You don't need very much, maybe like a 1/2 inch, just a little tiny piece. Some people do feel like painter's tape leaves less residue, so you might want to use that as well. But we'll just go ahead and set that aside for now. So let's go ahead and pull out our 20 gauge round soft wire. I'm just going to straighten out a length of that. And I'm going to be making about a size, I'm going to aim for 7.5 because that's pretty standard, and for that I do like to do an 11-inch length of wire. Whoops, 11 as I measure 12. An 11-inch length of wire. That should get you anywhere from 7 to 8 US size ring. Of course, if you're making one a little bit larger or smaller, you want to scale your wire up or down accordingly. And if this is the first time you're making this design, go ahead and cut an extra inch or two of wire just in case. If you make your hearts a little larger or smaller than I do, I don't want you to run out of wire at the end. That would be terrible. So we've got our 11-inch piece of wire, and what I'm going to do is just mark at the center of that with a little Sharpie pen. Just put a little tiny mark right in the center, and then go ahead and slide your bead on there. And we're going to position it right on that center mark that we made. And then we're going to start spiraling the wires around it to kind of encase it, just like that. So to do that, I'm going to hold it on the center mark. And just using my fingers, I'm going to bend one wire one way, and then you want to bend the other wire the other way. So I'm going to use my tweezer nose pliers to do that. And you want to get them really close to the bead, so you can kind of do this little maneuver very gently because you don't want to shatter your glass bead. So you can kind of squeeze them down like that. And then we're just going to start wrapping these around the bead. And you want to keep them very close to it. So we'll just go all the way around with one of them, and then go all the way around with the second one. And I like to use my chain nose pliers to tighten these down so that they're running right next to the bead. And then once your wires get back to their starting points where they exited the bead, we're going to bend them straight out and do the same thing on the other side. So that you've got your beads swirled around twice with wire, and your two tails are running off kind of in a straight line. So that's what we want. And at this point, go ahead and pull out your bead mandrel. And this is where we're going to start wrapping it to the size that we want. So I'm going to aim for 7.5. And I'm going to put my bead in the slot on the back and just wrap the tails around, crossing them over, and then bringing them back to the front. Well, technically the back of the bead mandrel, but the front of where we're working. And you might need to push your wrapped bead down a little bit. And I'm going to cross these over just like that. Okay, and let's verify that we're staying on the size that we want. You can really pull on these to make sure they're nice and tight. And now I'm going to hold very tightly with my fingers so it doesn't spring apart. Just slide the bead mandrel out. And this is the point at which, if you're using beads, you want to go ahead and add them. So again, I'm just using some 3mm silver-filled metal spacer beads. I'm going to slide one on each tail. And you want to thread them on and cross them over. Until they have come up and they're on those wires coming straight out from the bead. Just like that. And now I'm going to double check that I haven't lost my size here. 7.5, so I need to tighten a little more. There we go. And now go ahead and take out that little piece of masking tape that we saved earlier. I'm just going to place it on the back here to help hold everything together. And you can fold it over so that it just holds everything together like that. Alright, and once again I'm going to put this back on the mandrel. And now we're going to start putting in the heart shapes. So to do that, I want to go about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch away from the center bead. And we're going to put our first bend in there. So right about where my thumb is sitting. We're going to take this tail wire and just bend it away at an angle from our center band wire. So just like that. And then flipping this around, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And I'll just estimate this one. Kind of eyeball it. Same thing, going away at an angle there. And then we can slide that off. And now we're going to start swinging this around to form the little heart shape. Right there. So we'll use our round nose pliers to do that. So gripping right there with my round nose pliers, I'm going to swing this on around to get a little curve shape. And I like to have the diameter or width of my heart to be about the same as the center wrapped bead. I think that looks good. Maybe a little larger, but not too much. So that's kind of the width that we're going for there. So once you've got your little curved shape crossing over that center wire, we're going to put in the inner loop point of the heart. So to do that, I'm just going to swing this on around to form kind of a little teardrop shape at the center there. Let me tighten that down. So that's the shape that we're developing. And you want to have space below that little teardrop loop and above the point where your wire bends away from the center band. You want to have space in that area for your little 3mm bead to sit. So make sure that you're keeping him right there to gauge. So once you've got your center loop crossing over that center band wire, we're going to form the other little arch of the heart just by wrapping that on around. And let's refine that once again with our chain nose pliers. And this is a little bit easier to maneuver if you don't have these beads. So the first time you make this, you might want to do the slightly simpler version, which is still very pretty, you just don't have the little bead right there. That's just an extra piece to try and maneuver, you know, while you're shaping these wires how you want them. But basically, once we've got our heart looking more or less symmetrical and how we want it to, it should be just touching that center part with the wrapped bead, and then your little metal spacer bead should fit right in that space there. Then we're going to take this tail and wrap it around both of these band wires to secure everything. So to do that, I'm just going to bend it off at a 90-degree angle to the band wires. And then I'm going to start wrapping it through the center of the bead, or sorry, through the center of the ring. And before you tighten down your first wrap, just double check that everything is sitting where you want it to. I like to use my thumb and fingers of my left hand to stabilize it. Make sure that this is touching your center wrap and that your bead is sitting right there. Then kind of just stabilize everything down like that and gripping it, keeping it from shifting. And then you can use your chain nose pliers to tighten down that first wrap and secure everything in place. Just like that. And then we're going to put in another 2 wraps with this tail securing both of those band wires. Okay, so that's what we've got. We've got the 3 wraps, and you can do 3 or 4. It's really a matter of preference. On ring sizes 7 or less, I only do 3. If it's 8 or more, I tend to do 4 wraps here. And then what you can do is take this tail and put in a little tiny spiral there, like that. So I have a little more length on my tail than I need. That's always better than too little, so that's okay. I'm just going to trim off a little bit of this excess. And then you can use your round nose pliers to put in a really tight, well, technically an open spiral, but it's going to be very, very small. I might even need to trim off a little bit more than that. Yeah, I'm going to trim off a little more. And you can refine that again with your tweezer nose or chain nose pliers. There we go, so that's what we have, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side now, and this one is a little bit easier because we've already got things somewhat stabilized. So we'll go ahead and do that same thing. Again, putting in the heart shape. There we go. And the center little loop. And you do want to make careful that your hearts are looking, if not identical to each other, as close as you can get them. So that's the main thing to remember with the second heart that you're making, is to reference back to your first one. And just make sure that the ring is going to look as symmetrical as you can make it. Alright, so if you notice, the heart I've already finished on the right is a little bit smaller than the one on the left. That's what I was talking about. Just a little bit, not super noticeable. But I'm just going to make this one a little smaller to try and make it match better. Yeah, that's better. There we go. And as before, I'm going to secure this whole situation with my thumb so that I can start wrapping this tail around both of the band wires to secure everything down. And as before, we're going to put in 3 wraps there. And then we'll put in a matching little spiral like that on this side. So again, trimming off the excess. We'll use our round nose pliers to get it started. And then our chain nose pliers to finish it off. There we go. So at this point we can remove our masking tape, and you should just be able to rip it off. If you have any sticky residue left, you can often rub it off with your fingers. If it's really giving you trouble, you can use a little bit of alcohol, rubbing alcohol on a paper towel or something to clean it off. But I do like to flare out these wires ever so slightly from each other, just to make the band a little wider and more comfortable. Just like that. And then you can also just double check that everything is in line. You might need to adjust these hearts a little bit to get them in a straight line, but that looks pretty good. So that is our ring. Pretty simple. It can be, again, like I said, rather tricky to shape these hearts, so you might want to practice a few times with scrap wire. But once you get it mastered, it's very rewarding, very cute in different colors. As you can see, here's one in brass with a kind of navy stone. And again, as before, the ones in copper in different colors. You can use gemstone beads in the center. I like how these little fiber optic ones look though. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, found it helpful and easy to follow. I hope it gets you in the mood for Valentine's Day coming up here. Feel free to leave some comments below if you ran into trouble making this. If you need some help along the way, feel free to comment. And of course, I'm also open to suggestions for future tutorial topics you might like to see. If you did like this video, please like and subscribe. Make sure you click that little notification bell to make sure that you get notified when I post new videos. I do have a lot more planned for this new year, but in the meantime, happy crafting, and I will see you next time.